I should have known something was wrong before the exam. I'm 21 years old, in good physical shape, with no pains, complaints, or illnesses. But there were things that seemed strange to me, like, for example, not needing a haircut for 6 months. Or the little scratches and scrapes that never quite healed. I even had issues with insects. Sometimes I'd wake up because of itching, only to notice several ants crawling up and down my body. Other times I'd see patches of dirt on my elbows and knees. I loved nature and hiked a few times a week, so I didn't pay much attention to the insects and dirt. Until I had a biopsy on a suspicious-looking mole. I knew something was wrong when Dr. Johnson entered the room. He sat across from me with a serious expression.
We need to talk about the results of your biopsy.
Panic started. "It's melanoma. I have cancer. I'm only 21. He said.
We analyzed the cells and they don't appear cancerous. However, they're dead. All the cells we analyzed were not abnormal in any way, but they weren't alive either. Necrosis can occur for various reasons, like cold, for example, but I saw no signs of frostbite or anything else that could cause skin tissue necrosis.
"What's wrong then?" I asked.
We need to do more tests.
"What do you think it is?" I asked, being unsure.
I'll be honest with you, I really don't know right now. But don't worry, whatever it is, I don't think it's a big deal.
He was wrong. Dr. Johnson removed the mole and sent it to the lab. The analysis showed all cells were dead. Then he took skin samples from a few other parts of my body. They were dead too.
Usually, when cells die, including skin cells, they undergo apoptosis, which means they force themselves to implode before turning into cancer. But these cells, they're intact. It's just that the cellular processes aren't happening. It's almost like they're frozen in time. Have you been exposed to radiation or extreme temperatures?
I shook my head.
Any recent infections?
I shook my head again.
I'm going to refer you to a rheumatologist. I want to rule out autoimmune disease. I also want to refer you to my colleague, Dr. Kruger. He specializes in rare skin conditions.
So he had no idea. I stared at my skin, my arms, my feet. Everything looked perfectly normal. What's wrong with me? While waiting for my appointments with the new doctors, I decided to tell my friend Melanie. Melanie was one of the smartest people I knew, and she had studied biology. It was unlikely she knew anything. But what else could I do? Just stare at the wall and wait for more tests?
I think we should take a blood sample.
Melanie said after I told her everything. Then she opened a drawer and rummaged through various lab materials. She pricked my finger, which hurt, but she skillfully engaged me in conversation to distract me from the pain. She asked about my break from school 6 months ago and if I felt better. Then she put a drop of blood on a slide. She placed the cover slip on it, and the blood instantly spread into a transparent red pool. Then she slid it into the microscope and worked on the controls. "What are you looking for?" I asked, standing awkwardly behind her.
Things, just wait.
I waited patiently while Melanie continued to work on the controls and peered through the microscope. Then she gasped. What is it?"
See for yourself.
I put my eye to the microscope. I don't know much about biology. I study history and haven't used a microscope since 9th grade. But I could kind of tell what was happening. The small reddish blobs floating around were probably red blood cells, and the yellowish liquid was plasma. I don't see anything strange.
Can you see the white blood cells?
I squinted, and then I saw one. It was clear, spotted, and kind of prickly around the edges instead of round. "Yeah, I think so. It's not moving, none of them are." I heard her footsteps on the floor as she started to pace.
Normally, white blood cells move around, trying to neutralize threats, get rid of infections, stuff like that. But yours aren't. I think they're dead. It doesn't make sense. If all your white blood cells were dead, you would also be dead. You wouldn't be able to fight off the slightest illness or infection. Even the tiniest paper cut would get infected. But you are okay. Alive.
Melanie paced back and forth, and her voice grew more excited, frenetic.
There are so many genetic diseases and disorders we haven't classified yet. So many medical miracles that are still mysteries. What if you're one of them?
She took a deep breath.
How did life start? We still don't know exactly. Can something be alive while its cells are dead? Before we didn't think so. But you're sitting here, alive.
She started to pace faster, back and forth. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't like the way Melanie seemed so excited, so obsessed. I almost jumped as she stopped pacing and turned to face me, a huge grin on her face.
We'll show Dr. Reinhard. That's what we'll do. We can keep taking samples here, in the lab. Figure out what's going on. It could change the world, Annika. Don't you see? It could change everything we've ever known about life itself.
I got up and slowly backed toward the door. I think I'm going to go. I have an early class tomorrow.
No, stay! We have so much to discuss!
I grabbed the doorknob and ran out. I thought she'd follow me, maybe chase me down, inject me with horse tranquilizer, and start experimenting on me. But she didn't. When I turned around, the hallway was completely empty. I visited various doctors and did all sorts of tests. I covered my tracks by using a different doctor for each test, but the result was always the same. From cheek cells to skin cells to blood, everything in my body is dead. It doesn't make sense. My organs function. My kidneys filter my blood. My eyes can still see. My muscles contract and stretch as I move. Yet no matter what tests I conduct, biopsies, samples, blood, I can't find a single living cell in my body. I avoided Melanie, but about 3 weeks after storming out of her lab, she suddenly stood at my door. I only opened it because I thought she was the mailman. Melanie, I startled. I'm in the middle of. She pushed past me into my apartment.
I need to tell you something. Please just sit down!
She looked distraught, not fascinated and excited anymore, but disturbed. I sat down, my heart starting to race.
I sent your blood sample to a lab. They do very detailed analyses. And I thought it would be a good thing, but they didn't just look at your cells. They examined the molecular composition, the proteins, the molecules, the atoms, the elements. And everything is wrong, Annika. There are no molecules you'd find in a normal human cell.
What? What do you mean?
It's dirt! Dirt and mud and clay. When they ran the mass spectrometer and analysed the molecular composition of your cells, they matched the profile of dirt, not organic molecules you'd find in a human body.
What? This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Have you ever heard of a golem?
She asked, her voice now high and shrill. A golem. The word seeped into me. Right. The beings in Jewish folklore made from dirt or clay or other lifeless substances, animated by God or some other force, anthropomorphic, but never human, animated, but never alive. You're not saying... I shook my head.
That's insane. I can't... 6 months ago,
She said and pulled out her phone.
Annika Dreyfus, you died from a seizure. Look at the picture. You can't tell me that doesn't look exactly like you.
I looked at the article. There was a photo of me, an obituary, in loving memory. I felt dizzy. I felt weak. Every muscle in my body felt like it was contracting.
Someone couldn't bear to lose you,
She said, placing her phone on the table.
and this is how they decided to deal with it.
I stared at my hands, at my skin, made of mud, made of clay, animated but never alive.